And I suddenly realized how precious, how fragile life is right now. Not in 10 years or in 1 year or when I get rich or when I get to achieve something. It's always now.
Mm.
Now, and
You guys didn't hear, we have Paul Golden with us. Uh, to be honest, I don't know the man. We just met 20 minutes, 25 minutes ago. Interesting guy so far. I'm really looking forward to this tonight. So, Paul, is there anything you want to say before we start?
hey, Yanni, I feel like we're family already. So
All right.
thank you for having me.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Of course, like, you know. So, okay, Paul. We always start from one question, and it's really simple. Uh, how were you as a teenager? Like, how did you deal with the teenage years?
I was very shy. The great thing that I've enjoyed is being a twin.
Mm-hmm.
My twin is not shy, and we balance each other in some ways. But you have a constant companion when you're a twin. You're never really lonely. You're never isolated. You've always got friends. We had our own friends. And so there would be, usually at least two, but three or four people. So even though I was comfortable with my friends, I was very shy at school. I think it was just my nature, probably. And I'm thinking back to like 11. That's the age when my parents actually separated. But getting into my teens, like 14, 15, I was very much the sensitive kid reading books, talking to the girls. Interestingly, I got on well with them. I did get in my fair share of fights and
Mm-hmm.
normal boy stuff. We would go on various adventures, often into old buildings and sometimes new buildings where we could jump off perhaps the roof into a pile of sand and just do normal teenage things. Getting up to mischief sometimes, getting told off maybe by the police, but nothing serious. And I noticed my friends tended to want to get drunk as they got more into 15, 16, 17. Didn't interest me. I found, one pint of beer was too much for me. Uh, After a couple of occasions of that, I pretty much didn't try drinking again. But I was naturally reading about India, about philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
My twin brother was thinking about money. And when we could travel, I'd already been traveling a lot in France. It's local to England where I grew up, sort of Irish English family. I went to India. My twin brother went to America to make his fortune. And I went to find philosophy and sit in Tibetan monasteries. It's very interesting having this counterbalance of a twin. So yeah, my teenage years, a lot of it feeling quite shy, maybe a bit awkward. I found study fairly easy, although we're both dyslexic.
Mm-hmm.
I found subjects interesting because they took me outside of my hometown. And I thought my hometown was very quiet, but you have no idea what's in the world until you travel. But reading was one way to travel before you could actually get on a plane. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. And to be curious here, where did you grow up? Like you said, England, but
Yeah, in England. And then I picked grapes and traveled around France,
mm-hmm.
especially around the Pyrenees, also the Alps. I fell in love with mountains. So I spent a lot of time in my life in the mountains. That's where I found a great sense of peace,
Yeah.
better than in churches, even. I'd grown up with one particular church in England, a Christian Catholic church,
Mm-hmm.
but the mountains were much more kind of sacred, holy, peaceful place. But after France, I went to India. So on and off for 10 to 15 years, I would travel in Pakistan, India, Sri Lanka, where I also studied things like acupuncture, homeopathy, other natural therapies. Indian people generally have so much deep, rich culture, even in their food. And they have Ayurvedic medicine. And we were doing acupuncture, dipping it in homeopathic solutions to give to people. So many hundreds of hours of clinical experience that I couldn't replicate if I was to study that in a Western country. I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't get that kind of experience that you can get in India. I just love India so much that any opportunity I will always go back. So now as a midwife, I do go back to India occasionally for a birth and talk to colleagues and see what ideas we'd like to share. about either birth or my other passion is human rights, particularly human rights for childbirth, but also generally. So India had a big influence on me. I kept trying to get to New Zealand and always found some reason to come back to England. So I'd been in Australia where my twin brother settled to live after being in America. I really enjoyed Australia, Western Australia, the great freedom after being in a culture like England's quite a grey sky country. So the weather's not great and the culture is fairly materialistic. But when you're living an outdoor sunshine life down at the beach, catching waves, surfing a lot, you're not worried about what you own, how big your car or your house is. You just want to go catch another wave. You know, so you're in your body, you're in your feelings, you're in your kind of natural space with, particularly in the sea. Finally, I did get to New Zealand and I spent probably more than half my life in New Zealand, where also the midwifery style is more like the Netherlands, Holland, where they've had the highest rates of home birth and they're very natural about lots of things. And New Zealand seemed to take the best from the Dutch that went there, the English, Irish, Welsh who went to found New Zealand, quite different from Australia. So in a word, I often say New Zealand has a gentleness and that appealed to my nature. And Australia was a bit more aggressive, probably suited my twin brother. He is much more of a competitive nature person.
Yeah, and you said it right. That's to start here from the analogy you just said, right? So in Australia, you have everything is big out there in the nature, big snakes, big, right? So you got to be aggressive and competitive because it's not only humans; it's also the
you've got predators. You've got from little spiders. You've got Portuguese men of war, jellyfish, sharks, crocodiles, alligators, so many things.
Name it, you find it, right?
You can open the toilet and there's a snake or a scorpion, and in New Zealand, nothing. Even the sharks that come from Australia to New Zealand don't bite anyone. They're on holiday. They're just relaxing, chilling out. They go back to Australia, and for some reason they bite people, but not very often. But the same sharks, they've tagged them, come around. We have a lot of orca. People also call it the killer whale. I prefer orca. And they just endlessly go circles around New Zealand and they come right up on the beach. They look at children playing. They've never once harmed anybody. They're so intelligent. They're just interested. And your interaction in New Zealand is so close with the nature that stingrays, manta rays, especially dolphins, will just come and play with you. So it's a country full of playfulness. Even the mountains, you'll find hot water springs in remote places, including on the beach. If you dig a hole on the beach, the hot water comes up. So New Zealand is a very alive country, great surf, great everything. And I was mentioning the midwifery model there. It's quite normal for them. So I'm an independent midwife, traveling often.
I'll have to stop you here. We will go. I love it because you sum it up. Now we get who you are, right? But I have to stop you. Mike Wood is here. So hi, Mikey. And Mikey said, reading was traveling before you can go on a plane. Just tuned in and already words of wisdom through that. But I want to go back, right, to where we started, and then how you end up in I'm interested at first how you end up in midwifery. So you're back teenage in England with a twin brother. You were reading philosophy, India, traveling, like you said, with the books and stuff like that. So like I told you, it's a lot of this that I do. It's basically for teenagers, and then grown-ups also find them in these talk shows. So it's like, how did you do? Okay, you said school was easy, even though you were dyslexic. But were you in a regular high school or were you already in a specific high school?
It was a regular high school, 2,000 students.
All right.
Social class was kind of medium to low. There was one that was higher class up the road and one that was rougher nearby, where more of them went to jail. And the posher ones, more of them became politicians. So we were kind of in the middle. But I actually had to leave just before my exams. We got kicked out of school, partly because my brother was mostly getting into fights. He was the kind of kind of guy to kiss the girls, punch the guys, and I was quietly playing music actually.
Mm-hmm.
But both of us got kicked out. I actually was being bossy to the headmaster, telling him what our rights were, and that's something that's come out in me throughout life, to be the advocate, to stand up for other people. And sometimes you get a consequence of standing up for yourself. You can lose a job, you can lose a situation, but you could lose yourself if you don't stand up for something. So I'm very strong about standing up for rights, because if we don't stand up for each other, nobody will stand up for our rights. So I did get kicked out. They let us back to do some exams. I then went to college to do 3 years work to make up what other people would have done in 2 years. Took me an extra year.
But would
And
you to go to catch? I would just cut you. You said I can, so that's why I'm doing that. Everybody
Please.
who's watching, Paul said just interrupt me, no problem. So I'm just doing it. So the question after high school to go to the university is usually one of the biggest one as a teenager faces, right? So was that also really hard question for you? You didn't know what to do, and then you were like dwelling in that question for a long time, or it was pretty like you knew where you're going and it was just another thing to do?
In a way, I feel like everything's an accident, probably starting with my conception between my parents and being born is an accident in some ways. That I accidentally did well in law in my high school when I was aged 19, and I got a high grade, and I'd been going to the courts and watching this fantastic judge. He lived to about 100. He was very famous in England, and my teacher was friends with him. So he had a good influence on me. And I suddenly thought I will go to university and do law because I got good grades. And nobody in my family had been to university. I was the first one to go. So it was a big deal. I barely knew how to read and write. And there I was reading complex legal things. And halfway through the course, I failed one exam and I thought, I don't need to do this. I went to India instead. But the advocacy was still there. And when I came back, I wanted to work with health. And so I looked at physiotherapy, various physical therapies like Japanese shiatsu. And so I started doing natural therapy training. And I actually got a job as a student nurse. And I felt I could have gone into medical training, but I didn't like the philosophy of medical training. It's based on pathology, on a mechanical approach to the body that's gone wrong and needs fixing. Whereas I liked a holistic approach and 24-hour care. And I got that as a nurse. It was a great privilege to sit by the bedside of anybody, young or old, man or woman, child, whoever it is, and be with them. So that's something I've been learning ever since, is how to be with people, have that presence. And I'm realizing it's to be with yourself, gives you the quality to be with others. So yes, the meditation things I looked at in India, they all come together. Everything that we learn comes together. So if somebody's studying anything and somebody tells you it's a waste of time, if it feels right, do it, because it will always help something else later. So yeah, I went and did law, but didn't finish it until many years later. I then did another law degree. Yeah.
All right, but why India? You said in your books and stuff like that, but what
Well, I'd say when we're born, we have a path and we don't always know what it is. So I'm a different soul, although I have the same DNA as my twin brother. We have very different journeys. His was to go to America and Australia. I didn't think about Africa. I just had a feeling that India was home. And when I got there, I felt like it was my family waiting for me to arrive there. So I didn't have such a strong sense of family in England because my family split up, my parents, when I was young. So then you create and find family. I jokingly said, look, we're family, but actually we are all one family on the planet. And as you travel and people are so kind, inviting you into their country, into their homes, we realize that people treat us, even without their language, with great kindness, as they would a brother or any other family member. So India, it just resonated. That's what I've got to say. Like the guitar resonates for me. Somebody else will like the violin, the clarinet, or rock music. We've got to find what feels right and follow the goosebumps or follow the feeling. So I trust my intuition. I would rather make a mistake from trusting my intuition than not trusting it. And so often we have a feeling and the head says, no, that's not a good idea. We will get judged. Shut up, head. Follow the heart.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I agree. And while you were being in India for the first time, right? Why did you then come back?
I thought I would go for a year and I got very sick.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to come back and I got well and then I returned. So I fell in love with it and it was easier the second time. I always say the culture shock was not India, which is very crazy and different. You know, from burning bodies on the Ganges,
Yeah,
as a normal daily routine there, to eating food with your hand, or everything being so different. The culture shock was coming back to England, where I saw people were worried about their material possessions.
mm-hmm.
And in India, that hadn't been the case so much. It is, there's a lot of middle class and it's changed a bit. They also want material things. However, India is such a deeply spiritual place where they live it in their daily lives. Probably because a lot of people are so poor.
Yeah,
They're so rich spiritually. Whereas we're so rich materially, we're sometimes poor spiritually until a crisis happens and we have to let go many things to really appreciate what life is.
yeah. I could not agree more. And you said you were coming back and then you were doing another study, becoming a nurse. Uh,
Yeah.
didn't do the medical training, so different approach. Why? Why did you, from a law, you know what I mean? From law, what was the pinpoint that what happened that you shifted into that?
It's a great question. I appreciate this way of thinking because I've only realizing as you're asking this that advocacy was a strong thing. And you
Mm-hmm.
can do advocacy with the law, but by moving into clinical practice and being by the bedside, you can say to the young doctor who's just qualified, maybe that's not the best drug for this patient.
Mm-hmm.
Have you thought about their life? Because this patient might need something else. And that kind of advocacy had a direct impact on a person's health, maybe their life. Um, so I was really happy with clinical work and advocacy. And we can disagree with each other and all learn. I can be wrong for sure. But clinically, it's really helpful when people have different ideas, but actually the nurse knows the patient better because they're with them throughout that 24-hour period than somebody who comes along, sees a chart, doesn't see the patient, prescribes something, goes away. So probably advocacy, to answer your question, in a physical, clinical sense. Interestingly, at that time, there was only 3 male nurses in a huge hospital. There were 5 different hospitals on one site: psychiatry, mental disability, maternity, general health, and pediatrics. And in the whole complex, there were 2 guys ahead of me and then me. So it was very unusual for a man to be a nurse.
Yeah,
And
how,
that was
sorry.
1983.
Yeah, and that is the immediate question is, how did you deal with it? Did you have any, like, people looking down on you because you were a nurse, a man nurse? Did you have any, you know what I mean,
Yeah, to
prejudice
some
like
extent.
this? Yeah.
My father is naturally from his generation, how some people are racist or whatever. He was very chauvinistic, very sexist. He thought a man should be a man. A man shouldn't be feminine and soft and caring. A man should go hunt and gather and get the money. And he worked very hard. He, provided for us, but he couldn't understand being sensitive because he put up barriers. And many men think we have to put these tough barriers exterior. And strangely enough, people assumed that I would be gay if I was a nurse who was a man.
Yeah.
It didn't matter whether you are or you're not. I happen to be a father of children, I'm not, but some nurses are, and some female nurses are. It's not an issue now, but back then it was an assumption. If you're a sensitive guy, you must be gay. And the strange thing is, once I became a midwife, I know you want more of the journey, how I became that, but nobody's assumed I'm gay once I'm a midwife, because somehow they get the energy that, yes, you're sensitive, but you're also masculine. Yeah. So ask me another question.
Yeah, sure. No worries. So All right. And then, being one of the three nurses in the hospital, like what moved you in a ways of that you said, because somehow it senses that in there you kind of were were orientating toward what you want to do in life, like what is your, so to speak, call. It senses in there working with the patient, standing for the people, for the health of the people, being besides them, getting to know them. um
I
so
think
yeah.
death was a great experience. The first time it happened, I cried. A very old lady died, and she was expected to die. I couldn't understand how she had been alive. Now she was not alive. I had no experience of death. If we live in a village, we will know both birth and death and everything in between, sickness and health.
Yeah.
But we live in societies where we push things away. We put the responsibility on the hospital or the schools or the police to manage our lives. And when we take responsibility, interestingly, the Tibetan people where I lived, they have no schools, often no hospitals and no police. The families manage everything. So that gave me quite a different perspective. So there I am in the hospital. I'm sitting with people who are having their last breath and dying. And I suddenly realized how precious, how fragile life is right now. Not in 10 years or in 1 year or when I get rich or when I get to achieve something. It's always now. Now, as in right now, for us even listening to each other
Yeah,
in
this is it.
every breath. This is it. And you see that because now you've had a child born, life kind of changed. The moment your child is born, something happens, doesn't it? Where probably you also notice how fragile and how precious life is
Yeah,
because you hold that
definitely.
life in your hands.
Yeah, I mean, I was aware of that even before, but it does enhance us with the child. And yeah, like I told people, I really get this. This is it, right? This is it. And I often tell even people who did, great successes in the past, and had big things. We all do as we live as a human beings. I tell them, look, even you, Paul, right now, right? Everything you did in your life so far brought you to be speaking
Yeah,
with me right now, right?
yeah,
Everything you did, this
yeah.
is it. It
That's wisdom.
it
You've got
it,
it.
it bring you here, then it will take you to another thing, and that is, if you get that. I mean, if you get that, if you really like, not understand it, but you get it, it does enhance life in like, all right, this is it. So you can get calmness instantly.
In addition to all of our life experience that brought us to this coincidence, this synchronicity of both of us talking, our ancestors made this possible. So
Definitely.
some cultures I'm with, particularly the Maori culture in New Zealand, Aotearoa,
Mhm.
they will always at the beginning of a meeting say, we acknowledge the ancestors for this land, but also your ancestors that made it possible for you to be here, my ancestors that made it possible. So they kind of bring in this presence.
Yeah.
Instead of, we kind of ignore our grandparents and great grandparents, but we wouldn't be here. And we're standing on their shoulders. I know my father worked 3 jobs to pay for college to get educated. Then we all got a good education. And not everybody's lucky enough to do that. So I'm only here because of what my ancestors also did.
And it's great. It's great what you're saying, and Mikey says true as well. It's even though your father was a sexist or chauvinist, right?
Yeah,
But on the other side, he worked 3 jobs for
yeah,
you to be
yeah.
happy and do what you want to do in life, right?
So,
So,
so there's no
so
judgment. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. That's what I meant. All right. So sometimes people are not nice to you, or they have their own
yeah.
prejudice and judgments. But in the end, right? All right, he was that, and he did everything he could to support his child, and give
Yeah.
and did the best he knew. You know.
It's something I've learned from psychology. I've
Mm-hmm.
particularly enjoyed a training recently with Gabor Mate, the Hungarian
Mm-hmm.
who lives in Canada. He has a great online training, Compassionate Inquiry. I've been looking at psychology for many years, but I'm constantly reminded of the wounded child in everyone. So I work with mediation. We might get to how I became a mediator
Mm-hmm.
or midwife, but same with natural therapies. It's about seeing the wounded child in everybody instead of judging them, which we can judge ourselves and others, so long as we're curious about it and recognize it's something in me that really I'm judging. So if there's some trigger outside, I think this person is behaving like a sexist. Well, there's probably an element of that in me. Whatever we see in others is probably in ourselves.
Yeah, I do agree with that. Like whatever bothers you in other human beings, it bothers you where you are. Because if it wouldn't bother you here, it wouldn't bother you out there, right? There are things people do that bothers you, but that doesn't bother me. So.
And I grew up with the greatest bother was somebody who looked the same as me, but who, would punch me in the face and just be really challenging. Yeah. And of course, he's part of me. Physically, we were one egg that broke into two people. And I realized that people who are not my twin, in a way, are also part of me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all right. You mentioned twins. It's like, even though your brother is now on the other side of the world, for twins, it's known that, all right, he's back?
Yeah, he's back. Okay. He's in Europe. He's in the UK. Yeah.
But he's not next to you right now, right?
No.
So, but there is this, I don't know how is it?
There is connection?
Yeah, there is some different kind of connection between twins that they get to know or feel each other, even if they're like I said, the world is in between them.
When I was young, I was aware of that, being tuned in with my twin, of feeling things if he was upset. Now I'm older, I kind of extend it that anybody who's tuned in to somebody else, it could even be a stranger, but particularly a parent to their child. If your child's in the other room, you suddenly know when something's wrong. They just...
Yeah, it happened today with Ursha. So the little one, when he wakes up, he doesn't... Usually he woke up and he cries, right? In the middle of the day, like he's calling for us. He doesn't know any better. We know that at this moment. But now, like for the past 2-3 weeks, he stopped doing that, right? And he's sleeping on the bed, which is lift. So if he just start, he might fall down. But Ursha just sensed it and went in and saw him on the edge of the bed and got him before. Yeah.
So I don't think it's a twin connection exactly, although there is one. I think it's a human connection.
Yeah.
So anybody that we've made a connection with, and it can be a stranger that you're suddenly helping, you just tune into them. It's a vibration, a frequency. Yeah. You can even tune into nature, really, don't we? Some animals, particularly the relationships people have with their pets, dogs and cats and goats and horses, you can just almost think something and the animal looks at you like, I know what you're thinking.
Yeah. And I think that is the right now, putting thought into it is just like, we're taking that for granted, We're not really, I would say, we're not aware that this is it and that is extraordinary by itself. And that, we could actually, how to say it, not just use it by accident, like mothers and childs and whenever it happens, but we could actually put, so to speak, work into it so that we would be much more aware of what is going on with us and with people around us.
So for me, to put work into it, it might be as simple as tuning in or tuning out.
All right.
Sometimes, the guitar helps me tune out. I just kind of meditate when I play it. Yeah. Somebody's knitting or cooking, and it's a form, even ironing, something just relaxes you. And that's a way of maybe tuning out. But when we tune out, we might be letting inspiration come in. Or if we focus on our pet or our loved one, we're also tuning in. So a bit of both, maybe. Tuning in, tuning out.
Yeah, definitely. Like you said before the show, right? You said we can talk about ice cream, but it's whole another thing discovering ice cream, trying the ice cream. So
this is about life experience, like
this is the same thing, right? What we're talking about now is just like, you got to discover it and try it. We can talk about it. Won't move mountains until you discover it. So okay, so being there in the hospital and with the people and getting, what you were getting at that time, and then you said you went back to India. So where was that tipping point that you said, I want to be midwife? What happened for that?
As a student nurse, I went to birth a little bit, and there's a tipping point. two things, kind of good and bad, if we're going to label it. I saw a woman on her back screaming with her legs up in the stirrups, and this didn't seem right. It seemed like torture, and people were helping her to be tortured, and they were helping her with kindness. And around that time, my training gave me a video to watch called The Miracle of Birth. And I saw a baby being born much more gently. And then I saw this reality was not so gentle. So I had these two images. And then I saw more women also screaming. And I sat and talked with the women, and they shared. I was surprised how open they were. And what they wanted was calmness and kindness. And I thought, I can't work with birth because I'm a man and there's naked women, and that's embarrassing, that's awkward. But it sowed a seed that there is a miracle of life, a miracle of birth. It's something so amazing, I cannot understand it. We can understand the kidneys, the heart, the lung, and sickness and wellness, but I cannot understand birth. It really is a miracle. And that seed was in me. So I went off to back to Australia, actually, to work as a nurse. The only job I could get was, I'd done adult intensive care in England. I got one as in a children's hospital in intensive care. And it's usually quite hard to get this job, but they needed somebody, and they said they would give me the training. So it's great. And I had to go and help in the area that had the premature sick babies. These babies are often weighing 1 kilo. That's like 2 pounds or so. And I was quite scared of these tiny babies. I was scared of an ordinary big juicy baby, but these tiny ones were like skinned rabbits. And I was afraid I would hurt them. And I gradually got confident in handling them. And then I went to work in a remote outback of Australia, and I met midwives who were dealing with people with mental health. Maybe, they might cut their finger off or something, they would deal with that, or a woman having a baby. And I thought, wow, they can do everything. I'm here just as a nurse. I want to learn about birth. Then I can come to the outback. So I go to England, do this training. On top of my 3.5-year nursing, it would be 1.5 years. Otherwise, it's a 3-year degree normally. So I went back to England. I thought I'd just do the training. I'll work in it maybe for a year, and then I'll be in the outback. And that was 30 years ago, more than 30 years ago. So 88, I did the training, and that was in England. But the hospital had about 30% of the population from Pakistan. And for me, that was interesting because culturally, they often didn't want a male doctor, but most of them were okay about a male midwife. I mean, some of them for sure didn't want to see any man, but if I'd met them, particularly if I'd had a cup of tea or a chat with them, they're like, I don't want any man, but he's okay, because they've met you. So it was a great privilege to work with a lot of Muslim women, but basically you're working with sensitivity to whoever you're with, whether it's rich or poor. I worked in a posh private hospital, the Portland in London. There's all the film stars go there, and they pay an awful lot of money. Rich Arabic people go there. And I had to learn to get over my prejudice of rich people being perhaps different or elitist. Everybody can have fear and pain, and everybody goes through the same life experience. And I thought I was like a Robin Hood hero. I want to work with the poor and the sick. But you cannot always help the sick by being sick, and you cannot always help the poor by being poor. And so if I went to the rich hospital and worked there and earned some money, I could then go off to India and other places and do my other work. And I realized that people are very much the same, whatever color or shape or wealth they have.
Yeah, definitely. We're all bloody under the skin, they say.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's awesome what you were sharing, right? First of all, starting with that conversation about that before dealing with that, which is so abnormal for most of us in this part of the world, so to speak, which is actually just a natural thing, right? Everything dies. Nothing is forever on this planet. And we're like, it's something not to be talked about. It's just like shutting part of yourself down in I would say. And then you said, all right, you were dealing with those babies, the really premature ones, and then all that backup. I'm just amazed by how much experience you got, just something like the question that I have: how did you manage it all? You know, because all right, I will tell you where I'm coming from. Right, I'm coming from Slovenia is mostly like a country where do one job and you do it for life. So you can go travel, but it's mostly vacation. You don't go, you know. So just
Yeah.
to give you a little bit background, so that is so surprising for me in that time, right? What you were saying, 88. That's actually the year my brother was born. I was born 2 years before that. So and you were already traveling this much and experienced this much. So I don't know. Was that normal for that time, or where did you get all this courage or curiosity? You said you wanted to travel when you were young. That kind of makes sense, but still, one thing
I
is dreaming about it, another thing is doing it.
Yes, a lot of my friends sat at home dreaming of it, and they would buy expensive houses and cars and not spend money on traveling. I would spend all my money on traveling. And if I didn't have money, I would still travel because I hitchhiked an
Mm,
awful lot. Even in India, it's not always possible to hitchhike there. And the hippie time in the 60s was still a bit into the 70s. And I have older sisters who were quite hippies with their
mm,
older boyfriends who were hippies. And everybody talked at that time. There was an overland route to Afghanistan. And Afghanistan was not a war country back then. It
no, yeah,
was, peace and the culture. I mean, the Beatles went to Varanasi and sat by the Ganges, and they learnt about Eastern mysticism and religions and ideas and put it into their music. So that had opened things up. So travel was quite open. The only challenge why people wouldn't go sometimes is to go out of their comfort zone. And
mm,
I was always comfortable being uncomfortable, whether it was a man doing a woman's job or being cold and hungry up a mountain and not knowing how I was going to get to my destination. The worst thing that ever happened is to be cold and hungry. That's not so bad. You know, you can survive that. You learn to put some food in your pockets or in your rucksack. A great thing with traveling light and simple is if you can't carry it, you don't take it. And when you're up mountains, you don't want much weight.
yeah,
So a couple of books that would inspire people maybe watching is Dharma Bums by Jack Kerouac. I think they've made a film of it, and On the Road by Jack Kerouac. And this kind of philosophy of pick your guitar up, put your thumb out, see where the road takes you. Sometimes I was even depressed when I was studying. I remember I had no money. I just went and hitchhiked to visit one of my sisters or a friend, go there for a day, come back for a day, and I had changed my perspective. If I sat stuck in something, it wasn't working, just go for a walk or hitchhike. These days, we do have quite cheap travel, whether it's buses, trains, or flights, potentially,
mm,
because the flight to India when I went the first time was around 300 or £400, and it's about that price now, 40 years later. And I would have earned, 5,000 a year then,
mm,
maybe less. And in theory, one should be earning more than that. In fact, I think I earned 2 or 3,000 a year when I was a student nurse, and I still flew to Australia, which was almost 1,000. So I would borrow money to travel because I felt the travel was so worth it. And I encourage people, particularly if they want to go far away, if you're going to get a job in the other country, pay the fare back rather than sit here and never save up enough to go. Better to just go in debt, travel, and then pay it back and have the experience. We're often playing safe. Um,
yeah. And
yeah,
you mentioned money, right? It's just like because most people are not comfortable borrowing money except from the bank. that is I'm joking here, but it's just like if you say to people, "I'll borrow you money," they're like, "No, no, 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 I don't borrow money." But
yeah,
they do get credits from the bank, right? Which is pretty much the same thing. They just have to pay with interest back. So, but
yeah.
I'm joking. So how was that for you when you said I borrow money? So did you had a plan how you will pay it back or?
Well, mostly I did work and earn the money to travel, but if I saw an opportunity to go and I didn't have the money to do something, but the opportunity felt very strong in me, like then, for example, if there's a conference in India on human rights and childbirth and I'm interested, I just go. I'm just going to do it. I'll pay on my card and then I'll pay for it later by working extra. Or for kids who might want to go for 6 months to Australia, and they're not sure they've got enough money for the flight, if you go, the work you do there could pay for the flight.
Yeah. All right. Got it. Mike would say the old enemy, comfort zone. I know it. Yeah, it is extraordinary in this manner, living that you're comfortable out of comfort zone, because they say that, we all know it, but not many people experience it like regularly, right? To be how to say, like you said, that you're being in comfort zone when you are not in comfort zone, so to speak.
I'm comfortable with you that I could make a mistake. I could say something I regret. Every time I'm working with a family for a birth, I often say to the mother, I'm very likely to do something you don't want, so you must tell me what you do want, what you don't want. I could also make a mistake, and when we look back, say I should have done that earlier or later. So again, I share the responsibility with them to tell me what they want or not. But I'm very honest, and sometimes they say, oh, I could have done that thing earlier or different or something else. Sorry about that. And this honesty is usually enough, and it prevents people complaining about you. If you are saying, I'm right, I'm the boss, you should do this, and it's not the right thing, then they are very unhappy and complaining.
Yeah,
Some
because
of my colleagues like that.
Yeah, because you present yourself not as a human being, but as somebody who is perfect, and that doesn't work for human being to connect to another human being. It just doesn't.
But when people have read books, and I find this culture, whether somebody's a human being or a doctor, because doctors are elevated like God sometimes, and people are not questioning them and say, here, take these drugs. Could be antibiotics, maybe you're allergic to them. And they didn't question and check if you're allergic to them or something else. And we need to question each other. We need to question ourselves. And there is nobody above. We are all equal. But this culture of saying, well, a doctor is up there, I find it curious. In some countries, nobody's introducing who they are, what they are in the hospitals, particularly in Europe. In some countries, it's very strong law that we have to say who we are and what we are. And yet in other countries, they've still got this very old-fashioned idea of not questioning somebody in uniform, whether it's the police or a doctor or somebody. And I think it's healthy to question, but we can do it with kindness when we're questioning.
Yeah. That is a big thing, putting kindness into it. Because, right. All right. So from all this traveling, and then along the way, you decided to be a midwife. Why midwife? Out of all the...
There's many answers. The main answer is that women asked me to be their midwife because they saw me caring for their baby. One woman is still in touch with me now, and her baby I was holding, and she had been sick and the mother wasn't able to visit. So I was taking care of her, and she came one day. She saw this strange man holding her baby, like, who are you? But she saw the care that I was giving. And this woman and other women said, I wish you were my midwife. And I was like, but I can't, I'm a man. And I said, no, you're so kind, you're calm, you're confident, you give me information that allows me to make my choices of what care and treatment we give to the baby. And that would happen for them in birth. So when I was getting it from the horse's mouth, when the women were saying they'd like me to do it, originally I'd thought about being a physiotherapist, and I went to the College of Physiotherapy, and they'd said, no, you can't be a physiotherapist because we don't have changing rooms for men. They were quite sexist against men. And it's funny, I then, because I couldn't be a physiotherapist, actually became a midwife. And when I went to talk to the College of Midwives, they also said, no, you can't be a midwife because you can have compassion only for people when they're dying. You can never give birth, so you don't understand it. And the women said to me, we don't need you to experience what we're experiencing. We just need somebody there to respect us and our choices and give us the help that they need. And I saw quite a lot of tough female midwives that were not always kind, and they made assumptions about the woman's experience. Whereas a man who doesn't have a female body is hopefully quite sensitive and respectful, saying, is it okay if I put the baby here by your breast? Is it okay if I have a conversation with you about this subject? And they would choose what you did regarding talking or touching or anything. And a lot of my female colleagues could be quite brutal. And, the women felt very afraid of this.
Yeah, we do hear that experiences, that people, women giving birth and they come out of the hospital and it's, they say it was a horrendous experience and they don't want to do it anymore.
That's the main answer, is that women asked me to. In later years, I've realized maybe a deeper subconscious psychological reason might be that my own mother was struggling with 5 children under 5 when me and my twin brother were born, surprise twins at home. There was no scanning, so we didn't know that. And jokingly, maybe I reached in and pulled my brother out. Maybe I was a midwife then.
Kick him out, pressing legs into him. Go out. No, I'm joking.
Surprise. 2-3 kilo babies, and you think you've only one. My mother's very little, so it's surprising nobody knew there were twins. But the deep psychology might be a couple of things. I wish that my mother had more care and people would help and support her. And so when I see a woman who's busy breastfeeding or she's got other kids, just want to make her life easy. And as a male partner to your partner, all men are supporters. We're putting the food, the drink, the pillows, the cushions, making sure she's comfortable and taken care of. And our role is, as a man, is very much to support the woman. I say as a man, if we've got, a gay couple or whatever, so whoever the partner is, we support our partner. And that's a great thing to do. So maybe I also liked the whole thing of motherliness, whether it was the midwives being nice, feminine, motherly women, that I might be getting some of that maternal love that perhaps I missed as a child, or being around women giving birth. I think everybody sees a newborn baby getting so many cuddles and kisses and feeding. You go, I wish I was the baby, because life is so cozy for the baby.
Yeah, and it is simple, right? They're the most present beings in the world anyway, the babies.
I'm hungry.
Yeah, right, exactly. And all right, and you started out of that by accident, like you said it in the beginning. Most things happen by accident. You want to go physiotherapy, they said no. You want to go university, they said no. So how did you then get the education for midwifery? Where did you get it?
I did it at a university in England, but it was hospital-based. So I did that in Surrey, near Guildford. And it's fantastic to have hospital-based rather than academic-based, because that's a lot of essay writing. So currently, I teach. I've taught in Slovenia, in Ljubljana, for the midwives, the Babica. But particularly, I've taught more in Austria and also in other countries, Italy and Hungary. But in Austria, I'm very proud of the students. They've got immense confidence, and I'm trying to give them, I take the word trying out, I am giving them practical experience from stories. And they need this, because writing good essays is one thing, being by the bedside is another. Exactly. And we need our clinicians to have good clinical, good communication, a good touch, and we're listening with our hands and our ears. When we put the hands on, think, something's different from earlier. This person's getting maybe a sepsis, an infection, or they're having lack of oxygen. And you see that because of your clinical skills. And these things you cannot do in the university so well. So I had a very good training and a lot of experience. And I had great midwives around me. Some of them I didn't want to copy. They were having the women flat on their back and they might be shouting at the woman, being bossy. Then another midwife, she would push the bed away and say to the woman, here's the floor. You can squat, you can move around, you can get in the water. And I would see an active woman or a passive woman. The passive woman would suffer. The active woman would have a much shorter labor, usually a much more positive birth and positive healing time afterwards. The passive one was often traumatized, and she could spend her whole life getting over the birth experience. Just because the baby came out and everybody was alive, that was seen as, okay, that's good. No. I'm focused on the quality of the experience more than the quantity. So how does that woman perceive it? I could see a birth and think, that was so beautiful and so gentle, and the woman thinks it was traumatic. So what matters is her experience, not the observer. And so we have to listen to the woman. She doesn't always know, things change. So a woman who says she doesn't want water, I'll have the pool nearby available. And suddenly she says, okay, get me the pool. It's like, good job, I had it ready. Or the woman says, I don't need you to come to my house yet. The labour's not strong. I think, I've got a feeling to go and be by her house. So I take my camper van, be by her house, and she might call. I go up there and the baby's coming in half an hour. And it's better than if I was staying at home and I had a long journey.
Yeah. And, all right, now we get to how did you find your passion, right? And stuff. How did you then start? Was it hard to begin with? Because it's like a business. You started your own business.
Well, like a business, the first client for me as an independent midwife was my best friend.
Mm-hmm.
So I lived with this couple. I'd known them for years. In fact, I did my training in nursing with the woman. Really good friends, and they already had one child and a traumatic birth. So when the second baby was going to be born, she didn't trust anybody but me, and I was only newly qualified. So I felt this was a big responsibility, but I also loved and cared so much for my friend. I want to protect, make sure she has a good birth. So like a lot of businesses, it works with your friends. And I got invited, and it still happens today, over 30 years later. I don't advertise particularly, but somebody will tell someone that I'm available. And they might have a chat with me, and they realize that my philosophy fits with their philosophy. And that's what they want, probably. Everybody's got different needs and wishes. But some are not thinking, oh, you're a man. And some are thinking, well, I don't want a man. And for some, that's important. For many of them, it's not about gender or color or anything. It's the philosophy. Are you going to leave things alone? Do you respect nature? And will you allow me to have an uninterrupted, physiological, maybe unobserved birth? So it's not what I do, it's what I don't do. So if you're in a hospital, and I work a lot in hospitals, probably about 50 hospitals, Australia, New Zealand, England, then a little bit in China, Russia, India, Vietnam, many other places in Mexico. But even in England, probably 30, 40 hospitals. There can be great practice there, but we have a tendency to look at the clock, to give an injection, to speed things up, to please the hospital, to please the lawyers, because we might get criticized. So we have to please our regulator as well as the employer. Whereas if you're in a home birth with a woman and her labor stops, everybody can sleep and relax. You can check the baby's okay, the mother's okay, leave it alone. If the labor stops in hospital, they're mostly going to continue it. And I think a baby will come when it's ready, and the placenta will come when it's ready. We don't have to force the baby out or force the placenta out. And we do that often for convenience and at a price. So many of the problems, people say, thank goodness I was in hospital because I bled and they helped fix that. The only reason the woman bled is because what we did in the hospital. By speeding the labor up, by inducing it when the baby was not in a good position. Patience is the main thing. And I just listened to a great lecture by a medical negligence lawyer. And the main thing he was saying is we need calm, confident practitioners instead of people who are working from fear, rushing to do a cesarean that we don't need. And then if there's a problem from the cesarean, they're justifying, well, we thought we did the safe thing by doing the cesarean, but why didn't we just wait and watch? And that takes courage. So the people that choose me are saying, we just want you to be present. If we need something, you can help with it. If we don't need anything, that's great. And so I've mentioned to people, I thought we need to hold the space, but actually it's being the space. I'm sitting here with the guitar because it relaxes me. I should had a drink, I should eat, I should sleep when I need to. And if I take care of myself, others will take care of themselves. But if I'm too much of a pleaser, and I am a little bit, but we often want to help people so much, we're not looking after ourselves.
Yep.
And as parents, you've got to eat and drink and sleep to look after your child. And a caregiver has to do the same. But when you're working 14-hour shift and everything is life and death and desperate, you don't look after yourself. So I did a lot of that in hospitals, and I get out of the hospital, I go to the family's home, have a nice quiet birth, a very rare, on occasion, transfer to hospital if there's a special reason. It's interesting and curious for me that many doctors trust midwives to be at their birth at home rather than have a birth. Even obstetrician, having her second set of twins at home in water, she didn't birth in her hospital. She knew she wouldn't get what she wanted. Her colleagues would be frightened. She could have a better birth at home.
That's funny. I mean, that's funny in a sense of, that the doctors who are saying come to the hospital, give birth here, then they give it at home, because and on the other hand, it's being smart for them, at least that. But so do you have a record, maybe how many births did you do in the last 30 years doing this?
I've tried to count, and if I just gave you a number, it could be around 3,000 to 4,000. So home births would be a few hundred, but in hospital, I might look after a family up to the point of birth and my shift change and I would go home. Many times I stayed beyond my shift, sometimes a long time. But many times I look after somebody and prevent the problems, maybe for a whole day or 2 days I've seen them. But equally, I could come on a shift and somebody's being cared for by others and I just catch the baby. So some shifts I'm catching 3, 4, 5 babies on one 12-hour shift. Occasionally on 3 births could be from start to finish, that I meet the woman at the beginning of her labour, she gave birth, then another one comes and another one comes. So busy London hospitals or Auckland, these hospitals are having 10,000 births a year. Then I go to another hospital that has 100 births a year. And so we're sat around quiet, and then suddenly we have 1 or 2 weeks when there's everybody giving birth, often with the full moon, and then it's quiet for a few weeks. Continuity care models, I've worked where maybe 2 or 3 other midwives, maybe 4 of us in a team. So they've all got a few women each. I've got some. I can go on holiday. They take care of the women I care for. They go on holiday. I care for theirs. So as a numbers thing, yeah, it's in the thousands, but the numbers of families I've met would be in the tens of thousands working in the busy hospitals. But again, I'm down to quality. You could work with just a very few and have much more wisdom. Repeating the same mistake many times doesn't make us wise. So some of my colleagues have never had a physiological birth. That is where the mother's upright and there's no drugs used, the baby comes out naturally. And a physiological third stage where the placenta also comes naturally. So many times I've had a birth, if I was looking to leave the hospital, I say to the next midwife, can you go and take over? The placenta's still there. She's like, 20, 30 years, they've never had a natural placenta. So that means they've never given informed choice. And that's where the lawyer advocate comes in. I want to make sure the woman gives informed choice because she lives with the consequence for the rest of her life. It can't be me saying, this drug is good for you, let's get on with it, and then she has a problem from the drug.
Totally got it. And Ms. JP said, I have great experience with a midwife. That's my wife. She was very patient, supporting me in my wishes, not rushing. But on the other hand, doctors were very impatient, walking around saying it takes too much time.
That's so sad. A baby, the miracle of life, oh, it takes too much time. What an awful judgment. We don't need, in fact, the doctors are not experienced or qualified to work with birth. They're surgeons. If there's a complication and we need them, they're good at that. But if there isn't, we don't need them for normal birth because they are focused on the clock, on complications, and they are creating the complications. And it's great that the midwife is patient. Midwives are usually holding the hand, sat next to you, so they really genuinely care. If the doctor sat for 8 hours next to the woman, maybe with their hand on the belly sometimes, feeling how it is, they would also become softer, like the midwife.
Yeah, that is what I sense with you, that you are very, very calm. It's all about being calm and peaceful, and it's normal, it's natural. So, I told you how it went before the the birth of Ty. So in this kind of, I know you weren't in this kind of situation, so I'm just, we'll make a little assumption. So what would you normally do after everything going smoothly and then, the Ursha's contractions are getting weaker and the baby stopped, like I think it was 1 centimeter before it would come out.
So she was at 9 centimeters and it went quiet.
Yeah. It went
Yeah.
quiet for 4 or 5 hours until they give her the hormones to give her the artificial, so to speak, artificial contractions.
And do you have a question with that, or should
Yeah,
I
yeah.
just
What would you do? Yeah, that was the
I would do
question.
nothing. I would be curious. I would be with whatever arises. If nothing arises, be with that. If mother and baby are safe, let it be. Now, often you get to this 9 centimeters. The baby's got the cervix has been going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There is no 10. 10 has disappeared, and you've just got the head. Allowing nature to do whatever it needs to do. So if it needs some time, give it the time. However, adrenaline and oxytocin are in competition. And in the hospital, we've often got adrenaline just by being in the hospital, a reaction to the uniform, the lights, the smell, everything. And we need that to settle and the oxytocin, the love hormone, to come stronger. And this is usually stronger at home birth if you've got your cats and dog and your husband and children and familiar space and smells. Your body goes, ah. And if it stops, it's fine. It will come. So be with whatever arises. If it came quite fast, okay, be with that. If it comes slowly, be with that. That's all. I'm just being with things. But you can observe, and there's no reason to speed things up, because that type of contraction is often a lot more aggressively pushing the baby down and out.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we achieved the birth, but what's the rush?
Yeah, well, the rush is people are on the clock.
Yeah. And if a woman is tired, she can sleep and she gets her rest. She maybe eats or drinks something, she gets some energy back. And then when she needs that energy, it's there. I mean, I wouldn't say she needs the energy for pushing, because in a way, for most births, a woman does not need to push. Some people listening to this will think, he's wrong, I had to push. Yes, there are times and you will need to push. But most of the time, the body will do a lot of the work if we're doing the breathing. Just, and this is where they're going, aha, he's never had a baby. You're right, women, I've never had a baby. So I've never done the amazing thing that women have done. But for many births, you can just push the breath, let the body do a lot of it, possibly some pushing, but nothing like what we see in hospital of being told to push. That coached pushing is often holding the breath. Pushing is stopping the oxygen flowing to the baby and to the mother's tissues. Just breathing, and the body will do a lot of it. Occasionally, different situations, you do need to push, but that's not so often.
Yeah, and it sounds logical to me. Even now, remembering how Ursula was giving birth, it was like that. She was like, she had to have her eyes closed because of the how it's called, the dioptry. I don't know how it's called in English. She can't see well. That's it. I don't know how to say the diagnosis.
Did the blood vessels pop?
Sometimes no. She has.
Okay, don't worry.
She has glasses, and it's -6, something like that. I don't know, because I never had glasses.
But you're usually closing the eyes and doing all this, and see the hands cleansing.
Yeah.
Actually, when the hands open, the pelvis opens. So a woman who's doing that is often fighting herself. The baby is more difficult to come out. And if a woman can open, and I see this in water. So as soon as a woman who's saying, give me an epidural, or I can't do it, or whatever, she gets into the water, I'm on holiday. And the baby comes a lot easier. So water's fantastic. Shower's great, bath is good, but a deep pool where the water is up to the chest really allows the body to open. But also the mind, hypnobirthing or breathing, combinations of any relaxation techniques will allow the body also to open. Did you get a question there coming in, Yane?
I didn't have the question, but Mr. JP wrote, it's recommended for every woman to close their eyes. This was not related that I wear glasses.
So somebody said it's recommended for the women to close their eyes.
Yeah. My wife said it. She's in the chat.
Aha. Yeah. And there was one case I had where a woman, the lights are quite bright, and she had a lot of family members around her cheerleading and wishing her to have the baby quickly. They also had a flight to rush off to the airport, so they were trying to make the baby come quickly. And I noticed when she turned over, put her head under the pillow and closed out all the light into the darkness, she naturally relaxed and the baby came straight away then.
Mm.
So your wife is right. Often when a woman goes into herself, she finds her power.
Mm.
She finds the power to relax and allow the baby to come. So obviously, I'm interested in your wife's experience. She found it good to close her eyes.
Yeah. She said, yes, I'd love to try hypnobirthing next time.
And it's just hypnobirthing. I teach it with a colleague in London. She's written a very popular book. It's KGH hypnobirthing. There's a lot of free stuff on their website. It's mostly practicing and rehearsing the scripts. So the more frequently you rehearse relaxation, the more powerful it will be. So if your partner is touching your arm, say it's the word soften, or just stroking the arm, and you read a script, next time he just touches your arm, you go straight into a hypnosis almost. So it can be very powerful. It's just auto-suggestion of saying you are calm and relaxed, but it works on a deeper level the more you practice. So I recommend any form of hypnobirthing, whether it's my friend's one or there's many different ones. Yeah.
All right.
Good.
Thank you.
Good.
And another thing I remember is like, as you know, as it is for the first time, I would say, I don't know how most people experience it, but how I experienced it for the first time is like, you don't want to mess it up. Here's a baby. You don't want to do anything wrong so it doesn't die or it doesn't get, affected in somehow that I make something wrong, or that, it's all this fear of.
You're right. Fear or love.
Of,
Some people
yeah.
have enough love to trust. If they have that much love and trust, they don't need to go to the hospital. If we mention things like infection, there's so many hospital infections, including now COVID, and they're separating mothers and babies or partners from each other, separating the cord. The cord is giving the baby a glass of blood, and we separate the cord before the blood goes to the baby. The whole life is much better if it gets that blood. So many things happen, even just the culture of being in a hospital. If you need it, if you've got heart condition, lung condition, kidney problems, liver, and you've got some bad health, really severe diabetes, you might need the hospital. But if you don't need the hospital, there's often more problems happening there. So we think, oh, it's safe, let's go there. Actually, it's generally for 95+% of people, it's safe at home. And all our great grandparents gave birth at home. And what's changed is hygiene. We've got much better sanitation and washing and education and health. And women are not having 10 or 15 babies. So that was the reasons, and still is the reason, for remote parts of Africa and other places why women die in childbirth. So in developed countries, we've got such good hygiene and good standards of education. Women are, for the 95+%, they're safer outside of hospital. And anybody telling you otherwise is usually probably a shareholder in the business of hospitals. So they're the doctors, and they've got a vested interest in being important and powerful. I have an interest in not being important or powerful, that the woman is powerful. I reflect with a mirror the woman's strength by not saying anything, not doing anything, but by being calm in my space, in my balance. Then she's in her balance. The partner's thinking, what do I do? How do I help my woman? By being present. How do I be present? Take care of yourself. If even the guy smokes cigarettes, if he needs to go out and take care of himself, he can do that. But mostly when he's present with his woman, she knows she can rely on him. But he does have to take care of all his needs to be really present for her. He doesn't have to do anything. There's certain techniques of rubbing the back or whatever. That's all helpful. But it's his love, his familiarity that makes the woman feel secure. And sometimes some women actually want their sister or their mother or a whole team of people, and some want intimacy and they don't want their mother there. And some think they want something and it changes. Some are close to me and some are not close to me, and it can change. I just have to be comfortable, again, with being uncomfortable, comfortable also with intimacy. Somebody might just clutch hold of me and pull me in close. She's giving birth. So you're in that intimate space for that moment, and it's never about me. It's always about them. And that's something that took some years of understanding and working with birth, getting over the shyness that I said as a teenager I had in sexuality, and oh, there's a naked woman, and that's usually about sexuality. So, well, no, this woman needs you to be present, and it's not about you. So it really helps to focus on the miracle of birth. And it's like if there's any blood or any other stuff happening, you've got the bigger picture. It's about the miracle of life and a woman giving birth who has needs. So in a way, that woman becomes almost like your child. As I've got older, I feel a bit fatherly or even grandfatherly towards the families that I care for, because I might say something, they say, oh, that's very wise. It's like, well, I've had many more years of experience of making mistakes. So I'm able to say something that might save them from making some of the same mistakes. And that's the knowledge that people are passing on with age. And hopefully we're doing by sharing in our beautiful conversation that I'm enjoying with you, Yoni.
Thank you. Thank you for these words. And then I'm enjoying too. I mean, you have such peace. I would have a conversation with you with my eyes closed. Would be probably the best experience for me, because your voice is really calm. It settled the surroundings, and I'm sure everybody who is listening and here with us are enjoying it as well. So Mr. JP also said I could be more focused when I closed my eyes, but I closed mostly for a reason to prevent veins in my eyes to pop out. So
it does happen with labor sometimes. Some babies are also born with the little blood vessels that have popped, but some women with pushing, and that's the type of pushing when they're this causes the pressure. If somebody can breathe and let the body do the most of the pushing, it's fine. And being upright, gravity will allow the pushing to happen better. Squatting also facilitates pushing. Squatting opens the pelvis 30%. So if you're laying on your back pushing a bus uphill, it's really hard work, because that keeps going forward 2 steps, back 1 step.
Yeah, that's what happened with Ty. He went in and out and in and out and in and out.
So if you can't get off the bed, you can actually squat on the bed and maybe putting your arm around your partner, maybe arm around a midwife or a student or a doula, and you've got their shoulders in supporting, you can squat on the bed. So even a woman with an epidural can squat. As soon as she does that and her legs and the knees, everything opens, the pelvis where the baby's head is coming through will open 30% more. So this is kind of almost 10 centimeters across for the baby, and the pelvis is touching it. The pelvis just opens a bit, the baby can come. Yeah.
Awesome.
So I'm big fan of being physiological, get upright. But the hospitals, we've got a bed, you lay on it, we're monitoring you. You can still, the toilet's a great place. Just take the monitor off, go to the bathroom and maybe sit on the toilet. Some women never come away from the toilet. And some people are afraid the baby will be born into the toilet. No, you've always have time. And they actually have a bungee cord. So there's never very far the baby can go.
Bungee cord. King. Oh man, that's so cool that you said that they have a bungee cord.
I often grab a pillow if the woman is squatting and I'm maybe looking upwards. I grab a pillow and just bring it close. So if the baby's shot out, now many babies are coming slowly and you see a head just gradually coming, then eyes, then the nose, then the mouth, and very slowly a baby being born. But occasionally, whew, the whole baby's out and you see the feet. It's like there's an ejection reflex for some mothers. Some are slow, some are fast, and I'm ready for everything. So occasionally I've said to a woman, oh, you're 4 centimeters. I've just come out from checking. Often I'm not checking for the whole labor, but if I'm needing to check and she wants me to, 4 centimeters, and then the baby's coming. And in theory, that woman had to go from 4 to 10 centimeters, but the body doesn't know theory. The body can do anything. That for some woman, it's going to take 2 days. Another one, it's going to take 2 minutes.
On point. On point. Michael said, I want to thank JP for inviting Paul to the podcast. At the same time, I want to thank you, Mr. Golden, for sharing a little of your life. You're an exceptional man. Love the energy. So thank you.
Thank you for the compliment. And everything I am, you are too. We are all sharing the same things, basically love, having the courage to love. And I'm sure you do in your life, the person who's given this comment. However we give that courage to love, kindness to somebody on a park bench, somebody who's sad in their life, was having a conversation, perhaps on public transport, just giving kindness. And we can step up. Yeah, I work with birth, but it's just the same thing. It's however we choose to work with love. I do a lot of legal work, and I'm working with my enemies the same way as I am with a woman in labor, with the same compassion. So nobody's really my enemy. I just keep going and be really kind and asking, what would you like? What would you like? And they want to fight and do things like, okay, that's fine. What can I do for you? How can we find an agreement, a solution? Oh, we can't. Okay, we'll ask the judge for one. So I fill in a form, we go to court. I do lots of legal work, but it's the same kindness. And you can only give it to others if you're giving it to yourself. So I'm constantly working on this. And every day I might have a trigger that says, oh, I'm back to being that 11-year-old shy child, or feeling awkward or not loved or something. And then we project all these things, and we want other people to give us these things. So that awareness of being curious of a trigger, I'm judging myself. I don't think I have enough of this or that. And just observing it, relaxing about it, letting it come, letting it go. Oh, it will come again. That's okay.
Yeah, that's awesome, because anyway, you don't have any control over it, so to speak, right? It comes, and if you go into controlling it, what you resist persists, so it has you even more.
So the law of attraction is so true. It talks about holding the space as a kind of resistance, and that makes things worse. If you say everything's always working out for me, and it isn't, it will be. Everything's working out for me. And all these positive things from hypnobirthing language, I take out the word try or but or more. It just is positive. It's very true for life. I recommend hypnobirthing for life.
Yeah, but it also is, right? I always, when people say I'll try, I ask them, try to pick a pen. And then they usually do this. And I'm like, no, that's picking a pen. Put it down and try to pick a pen. And they go again like this. And I'm like, no, try. And they go like, what do I do? And I say, you see, doesn't do anything. Stop trying. Do it or don't do it. Trying, it's
do it or don't do it.
Yeah. So
that's brilliant.
Mr. JP said, I'm so much enjoying this conversation as well. Would love to have you by my side when I'm in labor. Well, you can have him. I told him before and he said a great thing what he is doing. What are you doing, Paul? Actually, you were saying it was so brilliant.
I go where I'm invited, so I invite you to invite me. And I did that today with somebody in Germany. She's putting a course on. I didn't actually even say that. I just said, I really respect the work you're doing. It's great. It's similar to my work. Good luck with it. Let me know if there's anything I can do. She said, you're exactly the person I need for my course in a month's time. So I get invited. You've invited me on this. I get invited to a birth because I'm just available. And but also there's other people available. So whoever we're tuning into, we will create our lives, what we wish for. I think the important, powerful word is to ask for help. So if we want something that's out of the system or different, we just have to be creative and ask for help. And one thing will lead to another, and you'll find somebody like me who's available. So there are some international traveling midwives.
Yeah, great. You said a great thing. And I meant about that, we pay you to be with us, but you actually don't do anything. That's what you.
If somebody books me, I joke that I come to your house, I eat your food, I sleep in your bed, I do nothing, and you pay me. And people say yes. Especially if they had too much done in hospital. They say, that's exactly what we want. We want you to be there, calm, in the corner, maybe in another room, or just relaxing, and check if we need something checked. And if something is really important, you come and do it. But we want, and they trust their bodies. They want to do the journey and be with themselves. It's not so common for first babies, but I really admire the ones who know themselves that well for the first baby, because I'm thinking, why go and get traumatized at the hospital? And I'm sorry to say, in my experience, most people get, even you've described, everything was fine. But I'm like, but you had the drip. And how is it for your baby? Even when we think we're okay or we want to have an induction, what does baby...
Now talking to you, I would say it as you're saying it. Sorry to interrupt. It's just like, it was fine in a way that, what I heard might happen, that, you heard stories where everything can happen. So it was fine. But looking at whether it was the most optimal one, like, you're
Yeah.
saying the natural, the with the squatting instead of pushing, instead of going into like this opening hand stuff like that. No, that wasn't it. It wasn't like that. And on the other hand, it is what it is. And also why it's great that you're here, that I'm sure Karina is working as a doula, and she knows
Yeah.
doulas. So Ursula is having her setting up her own brand, Power Mommy. So I hope you guys will share this conversation, but not because of Mr. JP and my getting me present, but what Paul is saying here. I think it can make a difference for a lot of women out there. Because
Many
it really
doulas
does.
are like a gentle like me. The doulas are not having to please an employer or a regulator. They're pleasing the woman. So it's easy for the doula to be really present, to be kind and gentle. And your labor, to encourage people out there, is usually half the length of time if you have a good doula or good support. And if you're moving around, those two things are all you need to reduce the average of 18 hours down to 9 hours. 9 might sound a long or a short time, because some people are in labor for 3 days. But it's about quality. If a woman's able to enjoy her labor, almost even have an orgasmic birth, that afterwards she says, wow, that was so fantastic, I could do it again. And some women say that the moment of birth, because they're on such a high, they enjoyed it. And doulas provide a fantastic thing. So the way I can be relaxed is difficult for midwives. They have to please the employer and the regulator. Doulas can be a lot more like my philosophy, very soft and gentle and present.
Awesome. Mike would say the grit, kindness, and love are the truth. And then Karina said, I must admit I was afraid of being a doula at home birth, but having conversations with Paul evaporated those fears. Amazing conversation between you two. Thank you, Karina, and then thank you, Paul, for who you are and making the difference with the people, to just to trust themselves, and that there is not a danger behind every corner predatoring on us, like like we were mostly born and raised in fear, right?
Yes.
So
everything in life seems to be fear or love, but particularly birth and hospitals is very much about this. Yeah.
And Mr. JP said, I missed the conversation after you read my comment. Ty needed me. I don't know, you'll watch it back. But I don't know what we said after I read your we said that that Paul is like this, that he invites you to invite him for the next labor. that's to shorten it up. But in my head it popped like this. All right. So, but Mr. JP will say what she wants, because she's the one who will be doing it, and it's the main character in the birth, her and the baby. But Karina as doula and you as a midwife, perfect combination.
I'm glad to hear you include the baby. The baby's a really active passenger. They're not passive. And sometimes we decide to go and get induced. It's like, let's listen to the baby. Let's listen to the body. What does the body want? What does the baby want?
Yeah, exactly.
The head wants a quick exit. It wants a quick fix sometimes. But hold on, what's the body want? Because the quick fix can actually be longer and more complicated than just taking a bit of time.
True that. And baby coming out when it comes out, it can breathe and do on its own, right? It cannot feed himself. That's why mothers. But we could say it's a full-grown man, so to speak, right? Full-grown human being in that manner. So it is important and active player in the process.
Yes. Well, you see this at a breech birth. When the head is inside and the body's born, they start doing tummy crunches, and their muscles, working with the mother's muscles, facilitate the birth for them to come out. We see it very clearly with a breech birth, but nowadays we're not seeing breech because everybody has cesarean. So I will attend a breech, I will attend twins, but whatever birth somebody's had, and if they've already had the birth, the great saving grace is skin to skin. So the more physical contact we have with our child, I particularly enjoy that my daughter didn't have nappies, and she knows her body really well. because as soon as she starts to stretch, we know she's going to need the toilet. So we hold her over a little bucket or something, or we have the cloth. So she knows her body really well, and she grows up saying, I can do it myself with many things. But skin to skin, breastfeeding, and if somebody's not breastfeeding for whatever reason, the skin to skin is the savior. If a woman had a traumatic birth, having as much closeness with the baby is going to help. The baby relaxes the jaw for feeding, the more they're on the skin. Often, if we're wrapping them up in clever clothes that are complicated and all this, and wrapping them and putting them in the cot, it doesn't last. The baby's not so happy. More naked on the skin, because how are we feeling if we hug somebody with our clothes on, or we have a skin to skin hug? It's so much more oxytocin, and the longer we're hugging, the more oxytocin we're having. So babies and mothers and fathers, we all need that much more skin to skin time. So I'm wishing that for everybody. If you have a birth in hospital, give me my baby, get the baby. Don't let them run away and weigh the baby and do everything. Keep the baby with you, especially for the golden hour. This is when the baby's reflexes are strong for feeding, and the microbiome, where they're picking up all the natural bacteria from mother. So I had a birth recently. The baby was tiny, and we got the cloth of the mother because the baby had to go away for a bit of treatment, and the mother actually got there to breastfeed. But in that hour gap, we got her t-shirt and rubbed it around her chest. We had also done vaginal swabs, so we could give this to the baby. And it's as if the mother was with the baby when she was actually still in theatre, recovering from the cesarean. But as soon as possible, we did get the two together, and they did breastfeed.
Nice. Yeah, that is why we picked that hospital in Slovenia, because they really, after the birth, they leave the mother with the baby, at least for, I don't know what it was, 45 minutes, 1 hour. Then they just did the measures and put it right back. So
would you say it's important you can actually ask them or tell them what you want and don't want?
Yeah.
And that worked for you? How was that for you? They listened to you?
And yeah, they listened, because they were thinking about the painkillers, but the midwife said after, she said, I didn't even want to ask you, because I know that it's not your wish, but if I would ask you, you would probably say yes, and then we would give it to you. But then I know I would be violating your initial wishes, how the birth should go. So yeah.
Well done, Yoni. It's great to hear your journey into parenthood, becoming a father. It's the birth of a father.
Yeah, but it's one thing that we said, we were also talking before the show, there's not a lot of support for fathers, and it's just like, all right, maybe some men just accept their father right away, but I thought I will, because that is my wish from when I was 8 years old, that I will, it's all I wanted to be, a husband and a father. But I found it not so easy accepting this, creature in our household, and I'm his father, because he needs mother more, so I'm not that as needed as mom, so. And it's just like it's coming more and more place now, when he's becoming more and more independent, so to speak. Now it's kicking in, right, when he's. But in the beginning, it was like, yeah, I know I was the father, like, logically, I had sex with Ursula, she gave birth, so it is my baby. So I am the father. But I couldn't, like, how to say, in Slovenian is ponotranit, so what would be the English word? Yeah, to accept it in, to come it from the inside out. I am the dad, to be.
Was it the responsibility, a big responsibility? Is that what?
Yeah, I would say that. Yeah, big response. It could go into that way.
When we looked at our own fathers or our own parents, we thought they knew everything, because they're just big and amazing when we were children. And then we become a parent, like, I'm not ready yet. I was 37 when my twins were born, and I'd worked with birth and babies, and I still felt like I'm not ready. I still need to learn some things.
Yeah.
So many people having children in their 20s is quite common, quite normal. If we don't feel ready, that's life. That's okay. That's part of it.
Yeah, Mr. JP said the word is internalize. That was the word that I would.
So you're in a good partnership there. You're helping each other.
Yeah. And she also said, altogether, they left Ty with Ursha for 3 hours. They just measured him after 1 hour or even more. I don't remember exactly. Time was the last thing on my mind, which is, yeah. And you know what
Right.
was the most fascinating for me, being the, so to speak, observer in the birth, right? Just being there supporting the mother, is like the woman in his, well, she, I cannot say for every woman, because you just said it, there can be different situations, but there is, this pain, this, we could say, unknown feeling, uncomfortable feeling when the baby is coming out.
Oh yeah.
But that is all gone when the baby is out. It's just like, it's like the whole, I don't know, it's just like you would have a dam, and the dam falls down and the water flushes down, and everything just suddenly, there is like this, or it's flushing down, but when it, spreads in, it's just like, I don't know how to
I've
describe it
observed
any
it.
other way. Yeah.
Well, you're right. I can't imagine it, even though I've observed it. There's that point of just suddenly, and the baby's coming, and it's everything opening up. There can be such a mixture of feelings, including pain and euphoria, but the body's giving all the right chemicals, all the right hormones to help soften and open. And the euphoria of almost, I can't do it, then I have done it. And there's this almost like a death feeling. There's something, a barrier that women go through. Not always, but many, many times. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say what you just said. I can't do it, but I have done it. It happens in really short time, right?
Yeah.
Because usually in life, how we do is like, I can't do it, and 1 week goes past, 1 month goes past, maybe years goes past, and then you do it, and it's just like, all right, I did it, and something new opens up. But it's not that strong when it happens like in a couple of minutes or seconds, right? Just like,
yeah,
it totally shifts the situation in matter of seconds or minutes, which is mostly not familiar for a human being in life. So yeah.
I'm glad we're talking about it, because birth is just not like anything else.
No.
It's just the most biggest event. And the great thing is, it's a commonality. We've all been born. Sometimes how we're born affects our lives. If we were born by being rescued, maybe we want to rescue people all our life.
Yeah.
If we were born simply and naturally, like I was at home as a twin, no big deal. I go in my approach to birth is, it's no big deal. It can be twins, it can be breech, you can do what you like. But somebody who's born by cesarean and saved in a rescue operation sometimes becomes the obstetrician, and therefore they want to rescue people. But the psychology of our birth, because everybody's been born, it's definitely having some impact on us.
Definitely. And Mr. JP said it's the most beautiful relief.
Glad to hear that, JP.
So yeah, it was amazing. Paul, one more question, right? We ask that every guest. In a romantic relationship, what is for you the most English word that I would describe it, that would say it? What is the juice for you in the romantic relationship? What is the thing that you most value in a romantic relationship?
I'm finding individual words. Respect is a really big one, especially as a man, to respect the woman, and gentleness. Because sometimes as a man, we think we've got to be prove ourselves. As I've got older, at some points I thought, I have to be young and energetic and rush around and fix everything, and in love the same. And it's not, it's gentleness. Nothing works through force, everything works through gentleness. So gentleness, respect, listening to our partners. And I think I heard somebody say it in your talk about Tantra, it was Karina, that it's not just the lovemaking they're talking about Tantra, it's how you are in the kitchen, not just in the bedroom, how you are when you're out for a walk. Are you showing gentleness and respect to your partner? And that's also showing it to yourself. So if we've got something we don't think is good enough about ourselves, we might be a bit pushy to other people. So that, again, it comes back to self-work and mindfulness and being with ourselves and being with our problems and saying, okay, I'm not perfect. But then we can be more honest with our partners. So gentleness and respect is what I'm feeling.
All right. Amazing.
Good luck, everybody watching with your relationships. And don't think, hey, I'm a guru, I've got it, I'm older, I just learning from my mistakes. And good luck to everybody out there. If you're becoming a parent, mother or a father,
Thank you.
enjoy it. Yeah,
Yeah,
enjoy the magic.
and we will be in touch for sure. So, any last words? Last words, like you're gonna die. Sorry, but in the question, how it was for you, the whole thing.
Absolutely fantastic. I've had lots of different experiences. This is completely unique, as you are, Yone. Fantastic. If anybody wants to ask me a question, I've got a website, Midwife Mediator. It's part of my work. I mentioned legal mediation, midwifemediator.com. So it's got a bit of information. I think there's a contact form. I'm freely and happily give any information about birth to people out there.
Amazing. Thank you for being so generous.
Thank you.
And loving. It does make a difference, especially in the world that we're living in.
Well, let's do that. Let's all keep loving and enjoy this wonderful program and platform that you're sharing with people. So I look forward to, I already learned something from the brief glimpse I looked at on the Tantra subject. And I'm sure you have many different subjects for me to enjoy looking at in English.
I mean, yeah, definitely. We're having every show and every podcast is on our YouTube channel and also on this Twitch channel. So Mr. J_P on YouTube, it will give you, we had shows with more than 50 guests. So I think 2/3 are in Slovenian, 1/3 is in English, and all the podcasts are in English. So you can.
I admire you for doing it. And I'll finish with my favorite quote is, whatever you dream of, begin it, do it now. Boldness has genius in it. You're doing it. You're bold. You're a genius because you've got this platform. Somebody else is sitting there, maybe I'll do it. You're doing it. That's brilliant.
Thank you, Paul, for these words. It just boosts my drive. So thank you. And we'll be in touch. We're planning that Ursula is getting pregnant this year, by end of the year, in the, let's say, autumn, because she gave birth in September. So there is this saying that is good for a woman body 1 year to recover. What do you say about that? Maybe that, or
maybe more, 1 to 2 years.
Really?
And if she has good superfood diet and herbs and she's feeling good, trust her body, not what I say. Yeah. That's the biggest thing. The words I'd say on my deathbed would trust your body, listen to your body, for everyone, especially a woman. So if it's right for her, but also the universe, you're going to invite this soul, this child to come into you. It will come when it's ready. But very good to have the good nutrition, because the body can be quite exhausted.
We do take care of that. So.
Yeah. But maybe in the summer next year, you think you'll be having a baby. Definitely.
So there you go, guys. You heard it from the expert for birds. I will call you expert for birds. You are with anybody with 30 years of experience and not doing a lot of marketing, but still being demanded out there. It's definitely an expert in his field. So thank you, Paul, one more time to join us. Thank you, everybody who watched. Hope you enjoyed. We will make it public on Facebook, on Instagram, stuff like that. So I will tag you in, Paul, so you can share it as well. And all the best. And like I said, we'll be in touch.
Adio, Valalita.
Yeah. So the drill, chat. Hug somebody, tell them you love them. Don't go to bed without that. Until next time, bye-bye.
Adio.